Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mondays with Mover. I am Mover C.W. Lemoine, author of the Spectre series and the Alex Shepard series. FINI Flight is the latest book in the Spectre series. It's available at any ebook retailer. If you haven't already, please pick it up, leave a review. It does help support the channel. On today's episode, I thought I would explain what red air is because I've been getting a lot of questions on what exactly I do here. People hear that I fly the T-38 now and they think, well, that must be pilot training, you must have students, you must be doing phase 3 of undergraduate pilot training. But what I'm actually doing is called red air. The technical term is adversary air or ADAIR. And today I thought I would talk about what that means, what it is to be red air, and how we train in general. So to start off, what is red air? Well, you have blue air and you have red air, and blue air being the good guys, so those that are training using our tactics, our techniques, our procedures, and then red air are the training aids. Those are the ones that go out, they're designated to simulate the bad guys and give presentations based on what the current threat is. So, in the Army, I think they call it Op 4 for opposing forces. But in the Air Force and the Navy, we just call it red air. And there's basically 3 different ways that you can be red air. First is just what's called in-house. So let's say you're leading a 4-ship and you want to practice defending a point. That's called defensive counter air. And you need somebody to fight against. So they will designate anywhere from 4 other aircraft to 8 to 10 to 12, just depends on how big the mission is, as red air. And those are the ones whose job it is to go out and try to bomb your target. And they, simulate being the bad guys, simulate whatever country you're thinking of. Back when I was flying the F-16, red air used to be a really good deal because you really weren't thinking. When you go out to do blue air, there's tactics, there's radar mech that you have to be good at. You have to make sure you know all the current procedures and tactics and all that stuff. But red air, it's kind of less of a threat in that sense. So you'd go out, you'd give them the presentation, and you'd die. And that was the goal. The goal was to get killed. You were just giving them a training aid. It allows us to use a more building block approach with more deliberate training objectives than if we just went out and mano-a-mano with 4 to 16 other airplanes. So there's in-house red air, and then there's if we fight against another squadron. So we'll trade back and forth. Let's say you've got multiple squadrons on base. One's an F-16 squadron, one's an F-15 squadron. Well, one week the F-15s may be red air for the F-16s, and another week we may switch and the F-16s will be red air for the F-15s, and that just gives you training. But still, you're not going full up using normal tactics. You're simulating what the bad guys do so that they can see what they would see in combat. That's good, but the problem with that is that anytime you're airborne, it costs money, right? It costs flying hours on the aircraft, the cost per flying hour, training, and all that stuff. When you go out and do red air, you're not getting as good a training as you would if you're doing blue air. So anytime those jets are airborne, you're basically burning hours on the airframes to train. So it's not an effective use of time. So what the Air Force and Navy have done is they've designated adversary air squadrons, and that's kind of what I've done throughout my career. In the Navy, back in 2012, I transitioned to the Navy Reserve, which Navy Reserve does red air. That's the mission of the Navy Reserve squadrons. There's F-5s down in Key West and Fallon, and there are F-18s, used to be A's, now they're C's at Virginia Beach and in New Orleans. And so the way that works is either squadrons would come to us down in New Orleans, or we would go to Fallon for the larger exercises. That's the Navy's version of red flag, kind of, because they're large force exercises, or down in Key West, and we would go simulate the bad guys. And we were professional red air, so that meant that our entire job was to train to do red air presentations, to know what the current threats were, to be able to replicate what the bad guys were doing, what the other countries are doing, and to know both blue and red tactics so that we could go out. Not necessarily, when we're out there, our goal wasn't necessarily to 100% replicate what the bad guys were doing, but to drive home lessons that they could take back, to force mistakes so that they would be able to come back and have something to debrief and learn to. So on the Navy side, that you would go through an adversary upgrade program, which involved first starting out as a wingman, then learning how to lead elements, which 2 aircraft in a division, and then learning large force exercises, and you're building presentations. So depending on what the syllabus event was and the desired learning objective was, we would build game plans, just like a playbook, to go out and test whatever the Blue Air guys were trying to work on for that day. And that allowed Blue Air, anytime they were airborne, they were 100% getting training. The experienced guys, us, because it's not new, but we're not new fighter pilots. We've done this for a while. It allowed us to focus on the Red Air stuff, knowing their tactics, knowing our tactics, and being able to drive home some lessons for them. On the dogfighting side, because we didn't just do the large force stuff, we also went through what's called ADTAC. And the ADTAC program allowed us to learn and teach dogfighting, basic fighter maneuvers. So we would learn offensive, defensive, high aspect, which is neutral, and then ACM. And we needed to be able to teach it because other squadrons would come down, like Prowlers, and then the Growler, and then even F-18s, although they did most of their training in-house at the RAG, Virginia Beach, or Lemoine. But we had the ability, if we needed to be able to go out 1v1 and not only give them a presentation, so give them a dissimilar aircraft to fight against, but also extract lessons learned, debrief, and teach the standard game plan. And the good part about that is we're not taking away an IP. We are dedicated for that mission, so we're very good at it. And also, it saves money because it's a lot cheaper to run an F-18A than a Super Hornet, and it's a lot cheaper to run an F-5 than an F-18C. So it's a cost-saving measure, but also it gives them a little bit better training because that's all we do is adversary air. On the Air Force side, there are dedicated Red Air squadrons, F-16s. I don't think F-15s still do it, but they used to do it at Nellis for Red Flag. Primarily at Red Flag and the large force exercises where they need 12 to 16 aircraft, because it is a very challenging mission because you're worried about deconfliction from everybody else and making sure that everyone is safe, and then coming up with a game plan that accurately not only replicates what the bad guys are doing, but also tests whatever learning objective they have for the day. For the F-22s, which is what I do, the T-38A was selected as the adversary trainer. You may be thinking, wow, that's a 1950s aircraft. How could it possibly train an F-22? But it does, because from the basic building block of just doing intercepts, where we're just a target for them to use their radar to intercept us and then try to pick up the visual, because remember, the F-22 is a big airplane and the T-38 is a very small airplane, and it's, especially with us, we're painted black, so it's very hard to see. So it gives them a little bit of a challenge to see us. We usually see them way before they see us visually. And then also, it's what they call budget dust. It does not cost a lot to operate. For example, the F-22 is very expensive. I think $50,000, $60,000 an hour versus T-38, which is like $10,000 an hour or less. So it's very cheap to operate, and you can get more hours, you can get more airplanes airborne, and you're not wasting money. Just think, if it is $60,000 an hour to fly an F-22, putting an F-22 against another F-22 is not very cost effective, but putting a much cheaper aircraft, and we give them good training because we know how to simulate the threats, and also we know what their tactics are, so we can drive home lessons learned. We can force mistakes that they can then go and learn from, because there's nothing more humbling for a student than to get shot down by a T-38 from 1958. It's kind of an eye-opening experience for them, which is good because we're mostly experienced pilots. Now, on the T-38 side, they do use it as kind of a flow-through if you will, where someone will be assigned an F-22 out of pilot training and then come to us on the active duty side to get experience, to get seasoned before going to the F-22. They'll get their flight lead upgrade, their instructor pilot upgrade. But, and that program is actually changing now. They can get any aircraft. It's not just the F-22. But in general, on the reserve side, it's all very experienced people that have flown F-15s, F-15 C models, the Strike Eagle, A-10s, F-16s, even F-22. So we have a lot of experience to create these game plans to give them good training. And again, it doesn't cost a whole lot. We also support the F-35 down at Eglin and any other squadrons that come into town. So it's a very robust training mission, but primarily we're there for the F-22, which is a great deal for the government because it doesn't cost much at all. And we can put up a whole lot of airplanes, 12 T-38s at a time. It's a lot of targets for them to have to deal with, and it does give them lots of good lessons learned. So don't underestimate what experience can do against young B Corps students. There's also a third piece to that, which is the contract Red Air. It's companies like Draken and ATAC that have taken either decommissioned or other Air Force's aircraft like the Mirage F1, the Kafir or other aircraft, and they are contracted by the U.S. government at a certain rate per day or per hour, and they provide Red Air using these aircraft that they've purchased with either retirees or former fighter pilots or even reservists that are doing that on the side. So they also give good training, and it's even cheaper than when we do it because they're not paying for the military retirements that the government pays for when a military member flies. They're not paying for some of the logistics and that the military has to do by having all these bases and stuff. So it is a cost-saving measure to contract some of this out. And it also force multiplies because they can get more of them and augment either us or the F-5s or the F-18s or whoever they're working with. So it's really a good deal for the government, and there are a lot of good opportunities there. So that's pretty much the three ways: in-house, slash another unit, or dedicated ADAIR, adversary air aggressors. It's also called aggressors. It all means the same thing, and then contract Red Air. So that's the quick and dirty on it. I know this is a short video. I'm actually going out to go fly adversary air the next couple weeks, so I thought it'd be a good topic to touch on. We do have on the T-38 side, we do have a small training program where we have instructor pilots that sit in the back, like you saw in that video I actually had to take down. But that is more for just our squadron and experience rated fighter pilots that are coming to fly the T-38A and just need a quick check out so they can get their check ride and fly solo. It is not UPT like phase 3 where you're flying a T-38 and it's just a program. This is just a backseat check. It's just a backseat IP that gives a check out and gives you your check ride so you can fly it. So it's not quite the same. Hope that explains it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll have a couple good videos in the future. Might have a pretty big announcement coming up, but I won't spoil it, especially not until it's finalized. I don't want to jinx anything. One thing though, because I talked about this on the early vlogs, and I guess a couple people have picked up on it and asked, the movie slash TV show. I was talking about this way a year ago, and that just tells you what development hell means. There has been no movement on the Absolute Vengeance TV series or movie. The producers we were working with way back then have moved on. We're no longer working with them, and we're shopping it around, but currently don't have anything on the horizon. So that's just kind of been on the back burner until I get some better contacts and a better way forward. So it sucks, but that's just part of the business. Hopefully we will be able to shop it around some more and maybe get some traction, but as of right now it's gone nowhere. But I do have a couple other projects that I'm working on that hopefully I'll be able to share with you guys in the near future. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.